And let's get into time to exhaustion. So TTE, you're seeing it a lot these days. I'm using it as a reference point to build your training programs. So what is time to exhaustion? So let's go down here, and this is right off of Training Peaks. This is not something that I designed. This is something that is been being utilized by Training Peaks in 4.0. So TTE is the maximum duration for which power equal to your model drive functional threshold power can be maintained. So it's telling us that this is right here the longest you can hold your model threshold power. So whatever your threshold power is, the longest you can hold that. So for this athlete here in this particular image, they can hold TTE for 37 minutes. Yep, they're only holding their threshold for 37 minutes. And what we look for is a point on this curve, power curve, where the power drops off. And as the power drops off, that is a fatigue point. And that is the point where we are calling it your threshold and also your time to exhaustion, or the time where power drops off significantly. Now, there are two ways to improve things. You can improve your TTE by flattening the curve, meaning you would hold threshold for longer periods of time. 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, upwards 70 minutes. I have some people who can do threshold for 70. Or you can drive power upward. You can shift the curve up. And when you shift the curve up, this becomes a little steeper drop where threshold goes up, but the time to exhaustion may go down. So TTE may go up a little bit, threshold may go up a little bit, but TTE will start to either stay here or go down. Ideal at this point in time in the year, during the off season, we want to improve fatigue resistance, our ability to hold power for longer periods. So one of the ways we would do that is we would improve on TTE. Another way that I use TTE is I'm building workouts where you're doing 200, 300, 400% of your TTE. So for example, if you ride 259 watts, so your threshold for 37 minutes, that would be 100% of your TTE at threshold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and say, I want you to do 200% of your TTE at 80% of threshold. You should be able to do that because you can ride 37 minutes at 100%. You should get very close to be able to do 80% for 80% of threshold for 200%, or 2 times your TTE. So for this particular athlete, 200% would be an hour and 15 minutes roughly at 80% of threshold. So 80% of this number. So they should be able to do that. Now if they go out and do the ride and they cannot hold that number, they cannot hold 75 minutes of 80% of threshold, which is tempo, if they cannot hold that, then we have a couple issues. Either they're fatigued or their threshold is overinflated, all right? Or they just can't suffer. So we need to teach them to be able to suffer. We're in an endurance sport. So we chose a sport that requires us to be uncomfortable. And so if you're not comfortable with being uncomfortable, then you're going to have some issues. So the key here is to make yourself uncomfortable and to extend those intervals. Those intervals should be durations of 60, 70, 90, could be 3-4 hours of interval. And so I want to touch on interval real quick. Interval is just the duration of work. It is not like 1 minute intervals, 2 minute intervals, 3 minutes. Yeah, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute are intervals, but a lot of times people think of intervals and they think of intensity or high intensity training, but intervals could be an hour, could be 2 hours, could be a 3-hour interval, okay? So an interval is a duration with some specificity in there. So you're doing some specific work within a duration of time, and that will give you that interval or that set of work that you're doing. It's not just high intensity intervals. So again, TTE is the drop-off point of threshold. We're using that as a baseline. So you should be able to do 200% of TTE, or 75 minutes for this athlete, at tempo, all right? You go out there and you do it. Great. We know you can do 75 minutes. Now let's put you at, I don't know, 250%. So 250%, this person's going to be around 90 minutes, 95 minutes. Boom, you do that. We know you can do 250. Now we go to 300%. So 3 times the TTE. So that's 90 plus 21. That's 110, 111 minutes. So now you're doing 111 minutes, almost 2 hours at tempo. You're able to do it. And now we're going to do 350 and then 400. Now what's going to happen here? Somewhere along the line, you're doing 400 minutes, or excuse me, 400%, 4 times this number. So well over 2 hours at tempo. And we're going to start to see TTE improving. And that's telling us that your ability to hold threshold for longer durations improving. Then at that point, maybe this 37 minutes becomes 45 minutes. Well, if we leave you at 400%, 4 times it at 45 minutes, we may be providing too much stimulus. So we may be giving you too much work. So now we have to reset the values and start back at maybe 150%, 200%. Again, so as this improves, we have to adjust the duration or the load that we're giving you. So what this does is gives us a baseline to track the amount of work we're giving you, give us a rhyme and a reason to the work. Instead of just going, hey, I want you to go 1 by 30, 2 by 30, hey, go ride tempo for an hour. So you know why that doesn't work? It's very simple why this doesn't work. These canned plans or this generic stuff that coaches give out is not specific to the individual. It's specific to their ability to easily write a training program. 2 by 20 is easy. 3 by 20 is easy. I can write 3 by 20, 85%, send that to 20 athletes, and then they pay me a bunch of money, and then some of them get good, some of them don't. Okay? When we use this model, we are becoming very specific for the athlete in a couple different ways. One, we're using their modeled FTP. So we're using their specific functional threshold power, which is very specific to each individual. Then what we are doing, we are taking their time to exhaustion, their ability to hold this number, and we're building training plans around that number. The basis of training is your threshold. So under and over and the different intensities and the load. Now we're able to design a program that gives us specific loads for each athlete. So if we look at me and my time to exhaustion is an hour, which it is, it's about an hour and 2 minutes. This person is 37 minutes. If I prescribe to them my workout, which is, and it's 200% of my time to exhaustion, which would be over 2 hours, they would be doing too much work, potentially. Because their fatigue resistance is only 37 minutes. Mine is an hour, okay, at threshold. So I can tolerate more stress because my time to exhaustion is an hour. I work to build that. So now, because I have a stronger fatigue resistance, I can do more work. And when I can do more work, I can see more gains. And that's basically what this person would want to do, is as they can do more work and tolerate more work, they can see more gains. Doesn't mean I will gain more or be stronger than them. It just means their individual prescription, they will allow for more work. So a lot of us just like to go out there and go, hey, I did 15 hours this week. I did 16 hours. I'm going to do 20 hours. The next week I'm going to do 25. That's a failed approach. It's flawed. If you don't tie that in to your individual physiology, what you can actually do or track something that's trackable, then potentially you could be overtraining, or you could be not effective overreaching, because you want to do the least amount of work, the very least amount of work for the biggest bang, or for the bucket to fill up, overflow, where you can see gains and then you recover. So that's what we're looking for. So I'm not saying this model is perfect. I'm not saying it's exact, but it's a lot better than just some generic, hey, do 3 times 30 minutes, go ride for 2 hours, go ride for 3 hours. This right here ties it into something. We're tying the duration, we're tying the load into time to exhaustion. And then that may not work. But what we're going to see is be able to track that. We're going to track time to exhaustion. Is that improving? Are we improving threshold? Are we improving these other parameters and numbers? And if we see improvements, we know it's working. If we don't see improvements, we know it's not working, and then we take a different approach. That's why data is so important for endurance athletes, because it's a data-driven sport. You don't have to know all this. You don't. The point of this is not for you to know what all this is and how to design it. That's why you hire a coach. That's why you pay someone else to do this. So when you wake up in the morning, you know exactly what to do, because you have trust in the program that's being entered into your plan or Training Peaks. You wake up that morning, you look at it, you're like, all right, I got to do 200% of TTE, 80%, I can do it. Boom, you go out there and you do it. All right, and if you don't do it, then you contact your coach. You guys have communication. You make some adjustments and tweak it, and you go forward again. Okay? If you don't have baselines or reference points, how do you know what's working, what's not working? You don't. And that's why, I can dish out 100 plans, keep it all the same. Everybody does the same thing, and about 50% of them will see some results, and the other 50% will not. 50% will, 50% won't, and then that to me is not a good ratio. We like to see 100% of our people improving. So that's how we're using time to exhaustion in the off season. And I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, I think that's plenty for the day. It's probably more than enough. It's probably more than you care to hear. So if you have any questions, shoot me an email, aeroprocoaching@gmail.com, aeroprocoaching@gmail.com. I will answer your questions, and we hope to bring a lot more information as we go through the off season. And train smarter, up your watts. Out.